I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I have this kind of morbid thought. Like, is this person alive? Is the bass player for Led Zeppelin alive? Is James Garner alive? Is Danny Glover? Sissy Spacek? These names that meant a lot to me at some point in my life, and I just sort of wonder, are they still around? Out of that list, only James Garner passed 10 years ago. R.I.P. Rockford. In a similar way, I sometimes just kind of wonder, what about bands? In order for me to think about a band that way, it has to be a band like I don't think about a ton, but I think about some. Like Blink-182. Are they still around? Is Muse a band? Did they go solo? Technically, does REM still exist? It's hard to tell. And what happens is, you look up the answers, and sometimes the bands still exist. And sometimes the worst case scenario, and I've discussed this recently, the worst case scenario is when you have a band that exists but only to be touring for the bag, kind of doing a greatest hits tour or 30th anniversary, 50th anniversary of their best album. No new music, no kind of new vitality. Which is why my favorite kind of band is, Schrodinger's band, the band that is broken up and not broken up at the same time. I put Daft Punk into that category. I know they said they broke up. They didn't break up. They are broken up and not broken up at the same time. And then we have the Head model. Radiohead is permanently broken up and permanently together. And so is Portishead. And so this is our unofficial Portishead week. Now that my channel, the algorithm, is dedicated almost entirely to hip-hop music and rap, I'm still going to talk about other stuff. So if you like it, please smash like, bucket, all that stuff. Make sure YouTube knows I'm more than just a rap commentator. Because I'm going to be reviewing the Beth Gibbons album, and then the other half, I'm putting the guitarist aside, the other half of Portishead, Jeff Barrow, with the album by Beak, which came out this week. So, within a span of a couple weeks, we have both of the main people of Portishead releasing albums. So they're broken up, but they're not. Their next album is right around the corner. 1994, 1997, 2008, and now we're waiting for 16 years. So let's do this, right? Let's sort of review these albums, think about these albums, see if we can't sort of smush them together to get a kind of Portishead feel. Maybe the sort of trip-hoppy, subtle humor might come through with Beak. Maybe more of the kind of far-away, haunting dreamscapes comes with Gibbons. Drums all over the place, general atmosphere. It's all basically here. But what's most important to me, obviously, in reviewing the album by Beth Gibbons, Life Outgrown, is Beth Gibbons herself. So when you look her up, right, you look up about her history, and she's a pretty enigmatic figure. I found a quote from Variety way back in the day by a journalist named Stephen Merkin, who said that she's like Billie Holiday fronting Siouxsie and the Banshees. That's a funny idea. I sort of get it, but I'm going to actually nuance that in a little bit. But what's she been up to? What's she been up to in these 16 years? I don't know. Do you know? Okay, hey. She was on Mother I Sober, one of the most listened to songs of the last month. That Kendrick song, hey, it all comes back to Kendrick, right? Maybe I'll get some Kendrick views on this. If you heard her sing on that song, you know that Kendrick knew that the only person you could get to communicate that kind of longing emotion, that kind of tenderness, that kind of warm coldness that Beth Gibbons has. I don't know any other way to put it. That's her voice in there, and that's one thing she's done. And then while I was getting ready for this review, I was like, well, listen, I didn't even realize that the guy from Portishead had done 4 albums with Beak. So that's cool. He's doing his solo stuff. Maybe Beth Gibbons has been out there doing it. And what did she do? Gorecki Symphony No. 3. She sang with the Polish National Orchestra and performed Gorecki's Symphony No. 3. Now, there's a fair chance you out there have never heard of Gorecki or Gorecki's Symphony No. 3. Let's go on a little story time, shall we? Back in the day, there was a period of time where the way to get massive quantities of music, there was no streaming. So you could either buy everything from the Apple Store, or you could copy things onto your iPod or onto your computer from friends who had burned stuff onto their computer, right? So I'm not using Napster, any of that stuff. So what this meant was whatever my brothers had, I would take, and whatever I had, they would take. And this led to a lot of great discoveries. So my older brother, he, first of all, gave me all the Dora the Explorer music, so I know all those songs down. I know every single word to the Map song. It's true, right? How many 46-year-old dudes can sing you every word to the Map song? I know the first verse, the second verse. I even know the alternate lyrics, okay? But the other thing was, his wife was a big fan of Gorecki Symphony No. 3. So the way it used to be is, I just put it on shuffle, and I just kind of go through things. And I'd be in Santa Barbara, and I'd be up on the 8th floor of the library working on my thesis or working on my grad papers, really beautiful view, panoramic view, you see the ocean, you see the mountain, everything. And one time, Gorecki Symphony No. 3 came on. I'd never heard of Gorecki. My knowledge of classical music is generally limited to the greats. Like, I know of, Schopenhauer, but I don't know Schopenhauer's music, and I'd never even heard of Gorecki. So here I am, listening to this music, this sad, low, dissonant music, this beautiful, growing sound. Some of the greatest moments of my entire life are being on the 8th floor or 7th floor, whatever the top floor is of the Santa Barbara Library, UC Santa Barbara Library, listening to this music while thinking about great thoughts and writing very complicated 20 to 30 page papers in French. I say all of that because I feel like I get it now. Like, oh, who is Beth Gibbons? What is and what was Portishead? Portishead is and was something, and Beth Gibbons is and was someone who would choose to do a version of Gorecki Symphony No. 3. If you've never heard it, I implore you to listen to it. Her version is great. She brings a lack of trained quality to this performance. She brings a rawness. She brings the Beth Gibbonness to it. It is outstanding. Just outstanding. It's already this beautiful, I swear, when you listen to it, when you listen to Gorecki Symphony No. 3, hold strong. The first 3 minutes are just so low that you don't quite get to the soaring moments, and then the singing. And that's what helped me to really understand something about what made Portishead great, what makes Beth Gibbons great, is this space that she lives in. And what it made me go further is what Portishead did for me. So when Dummy came out, I was like every other dummy, and I went out and I bought it and said, this is dope, this is awesome. But I went one step further. I was like, what are these samples? What that ended up doing is bringing me to not Hot Buttered Soul, Black Moses, the album by Isaac Hayes. I can't actually find my CD, so I have Hot Buttered Soul by Isaac Hayes. Similar vein, not quite as polished. I knew Isaac Hayes from the Shaft soundtrack, and I owned that on CD, and I had fun listening to it. At least the first two songs, Shaft and Bumpy's Lament. Maybe Shaft's Taxi Ride. There's some great bops on that album. But in general, it's like most people, my knowledge of Isaac Hayes is fairly limited. So when Portishead put multiple samples of Isaac Hayes, never fall in love again, when you realize that everything that is at the basis of Portishead is Isaac Hayes, you are under a moral obligation to go back and listen to Black Moses and listen to Hot Buttered Soul and appreciate this world that Isaac Hayes lives in. And then you listen to Portishead and you realize it's the same world. It doesn't matter if he's a black dude from Memphis and she's a British lady from Bristol. I want to say Bristol. It's the same space. And then Gorecki gets thrown into it. And I had legitimate goosebumps. Now listen, Gorecki Symphony No. 3, even though the symphony was written after that. But still, it made me understand that there's a specific musical space that Portishead can bring you. That's the same space as Gorecki and Isaac Hayes. Now, I don't have a script. I have notes. But I took a long time to write these words down carefully. So allow me to read for a second. It is music which elicits some kind of longing, deep, unhurried, atmospheric transcendence with dynamic tension and release. Okay, I'll say that again. the music of Gorecki, the mature music of Isaac Hayes in the early to mid-70s, and the output of Portishead and Beth Gibbons, creates some kind of longing, deep, unhurried atmospheric transcendence with dynamic tension and release. It's that unhurried nature that makes her so great and makes him so great and makes Gorecki so great and makes it so hard in our modern click, 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 swipe, 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 on demand, on demand, on demand. Can make it so hard to listen to Hot Buttered Soul. Can make it so hard to listen to Gorecki. That might not even be the way I pronounce it. If you're Polish, I apologize. Okay? Great, wonderful composer, right? And so tied into all of that, that musical space is what I believe to be that kind of warm coldness that Beth Gibbons is capable of eliciting with her voice. And that's why I don't actually think that like Billie Holiday is that great of a comp. I mean, certainly in terms of, I suppose in terms of like talent and maybe jazziness and all that, but really, it feels to me, there's one lyric on this album that I think is like the Beth Gibbons lyric. It could have been written in 1994, and I'm going to predict it could be written in 2094. And it comes from this album. My heart is tired and worn. As she sings, my heart is tired and worn. You hear it. But unlike many other singers, when she sings about being tired and worn and finished and used up and all of those things, unlike those singers, personally, I don't feel tired and worn with her. I feel as though I'm watching or listening to a great piece of art that expresses the feeling of wornness, of fatigue, but without actually dragging me down into it. Thank you for auditing the always positive New Music Review show, hosted by a French professor who's listening to this album one more time this morning before doing this video. And as you may know, sometimes when I listen to music, I watch a movie on mute while I'm on the elliptical. Okay, the ADHD is super real. I only eat with small spoons. That's how much ADD I have. Turns out that's a trait of ADD. I didn't know that. And so I just, I kind of flip through. Like I watch a thing called Pluto TV where they have a whole bunch of movies, and it's like luck of the draw. What movie is going to show? Can I draw some kind of parallel between what I'm watching and what I'm listening to? And it happened to be that Sunset Boulevard by Billy Wilder was playing. So, this is wild. If you don't know Sunset Boulevard, it's this wonderful comedy / thriller / drama / mystery about an aged silent film star who lives in this decrepit mansion, and this kind of like wisecracking writer ends up living with her, and there's a whole bunch of mystery and death, and a lot of it is about just the way that women and writers, for that matter, are just used up by the industry and just spit out once they're no longer ingenue, once they're no longer younger. And what's wild is when I listen to this album and I like this album, and then my daughter who's a teenager listened to it and liked this album, and I just understand, I know there has to be so many young people, so many people half my age, so many people in their 20s who are listening to this album and connecting to it. I'm realizing it's part of this larger thing which is happening, which makes Sunset Boulevard hit less hard. Because when I listen to this album, it makes me think of Kate Winslet. Kate Winslet gets to have a career. Kate Winslet 30 years ago was done. She's up there Norma Desmonding it, talking about when she was in Titanic. Now, she's putting on a killer Philadelphia accent. Same thing with Kate Blanchett. Jean Smart just pops up out of nowhere. We are now reaching a point where culture accepts the artistic output of women over the age of 35. That sounds like I'm being hyperbolic. I'm not. That was not the case 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And so I think the one line that I want to apply to this, that I think works perfectly, and I don't know anything about Beth Gibbons. We'll talk about that in a second. Norma Desmond says, "It is not a comeback. It is a return." And is there anything more true than this? Is this not the return of Beth Gibbons? This doesn't feel like a comeback. This doesn't feel like she went so low and here she is and here's her great revenge. She's just returning. She still wrote the rip. She's still responsible for half of Portishead 3, maybe the best album of that decade, certainly up there. So, I'm sitting and I'm like, I don't know anything about Beth Gibbons. And part of what makes it so interesting is if you actually look up the history of Gorecki Symphony No. 3, it's about a lot of things and it's about nothing. He was very evasive about it. But the one thing he would say is, one, he was always trying to figure out how he could possibly write something that would talk about Auschwitz. This is not that. But what he did try to do with this, and his general concept of Symphony No. 3 is it's about the relationship between a mother and child. And this album, Lives Outgrown, is it an album about motherhood? I can't tell. I don't know. It could be. It could be an album about motherhood from a personal place. I looked it up. I am ashamed. Okay, I try to stay away from biography, but my curiosity got the better of me. I looked up. I literally typed into Google, to my shame, these fingers, these disgusting, filthy, gossipy T fingers, okay? Typed up, does Beth Gibbons have children? Is she married? I found who'sdatedwho.com. First of all, it should be who's dated whom. Doesn't matter. Who'sdatedwho.com. And this is what they say about Beth Gibbons' biography. According to our records, Beth Gibbons is possibly single. Thank you, who'sdatedwho.com. That is true, and I've checked. I've done my own research. That is true about literally everybody on planet Earth. Everybody on planet Earth is possibly single. What I like is that fact, that we don't know anything about her. Okay, I don't know anything about her. Maybe you do. Maybe you're on Portishead.net, Reddit, / whatever. Great. You know the name of her husband, and she's got 4 kids, 5 kids, 6 kids, whatever. It ends up being that kind of Schrodinger's album about motherhood, where it could be about motherhood from someone who's not a mother, or it's about motherhood from someone who is a mother. When we think about this album in a different way, so more musically, it took me a while. I started listening to this album, I think the album's been out for a couple of weeks. And I've got a couple of people commenting, Skye, when are you going to review Beth Gibbons? Well, first of all, I can't predict when this whole beef stuff is going to end because I'm having so much fun doing that, and I'm reaching such a great audience with that. But beyond that, just this is such a deep album. And musically, it's so deep. And it's all of those things that I described, that play of dynamics, the atmosphere, the unhurried atmosphere that creates the sense of transcendence. But it's also very, very, very English. Not... Okay. So I had this thought when I listened to it, where I was like, hey, what's going on here? Didn't PJ Harvey just release an album last year that was sort of connected to British pre-rock, pre-American music, British folk music? Didn't she do that? And then there's this album, which gives me that same feeling, to the point where I was listening to Beth Gibbons, and my son comes down, and he sort of snarkily says, he's a freshman in college, he says, wow, I didn't expect PJ Harvey's album to influence the world so quickly. Now, I let him know, well, this has probably been, it's been 16 years since she's released any kind of non-orchestral music, so I'm going to guess that she's been working on this for a while, but there is something interesting there. I'm not going to be the one who tells you, because I'm not British, I'm not English, I'm not even Scottish or Walesian. I'm not a Wales. A Welshman. But maybe there's something about the fact that England is, and I've done some research on this, fucked. These things are really, I complain a lot about America. Things are really rough in England. And on top of that, the Brexit-y thing and the sense of English nationalism, that I think in a way, an appeal to pre-American, pre-popular music, British music, doesn't reinforce nationalism. It sort of reinforces a sort of more natural, I don't know, collectivist mentality. Am I crazy? Does this all make sense to you? This might be too far. If it's too far, that's fine. Let me make it more specific again. Musically, part of what this means is that there's very little electronic stuff happening here. There's a ton of drone mechanics. Some people think that the bagpipe was the first harmony ever in the world. Like, it's probably true. So bagpipes, you get the thing and you put it under your arm and go, and then you play stuff forward. Right? So you have that drone and then you have that sound over it. And what you want to do when you make music is you want to resolve. So often in this album and in British folk music in general, you'll have that sort of sense of resolve with a kind of droning feel. On top of that, the guitars are usually acoustic. There's flutes, there's recorders, and there's drums. There's one thing. When I realized I was going to review Beak, and I realized I was going to review this, I had a narrative all set up in my head. But the narrative was bad. It was like, you go to Beth Gibbons for the atmosphere, and then you go to Jeff Barrow for the rhythm, because he plays drums for Beak in addition to singing. But that's just not true. They're both drum albums. This is like a drum album. The percussion is everywhere. Now, it's mostly muted. It's mostly hand drums. It's mostly percussion. But the drummer, Lee Hall, who also, I guess, played for Talk Talk, he actually gets songwriting credits on a lot of this. And he deserves it because it is a ridiculously drum-centered album, but not in the way that you think. They saved a ton of money on cymbals. The Zildjian Corporation did not sponsor this album. Okay? It is just like all toms and muted toms and hand drums. And what does that make you feel? It makes you feel pre-jazz, pre-America, pre-pop. Another couple more interesting points about this album before I get to the song specifically. Almost every outro is very cool. Like, has this kind of like something about it that's interesting. Almost every song has some kind of instrumental bit that just makes you go, damn. This is why I want to keep listening to the album, because I keep hearing these instrumental things that make me go, damn. There's also a lot, speaking of English nationalism, there's a lot of James Bond on this album. There will be certain times where it has, I mean, it's cinematic in general, but this is maybe when it doesn't feel folky. It feels cinematic and large and kind of James Bondy. And that's where I want to nuance what that guy said about Siouxsie and the Banshees with Billie Holiday. I actually think a better comp is Shirley Bassey. Shirley Bassey, who sang Goldfinger and Diamonds Are Forever, one of the most famous singers. This is her remix album, one of the most underrated electronic albums of the 90s. I was once told that the fact that I listened to and liked this album meant that I was secretly gay. Call me George Clooney. I love this album, okay? It's so, so good. But the reason that's so good is Shirley Bassey on there. So that's just a little theory for you out there. If you are a Beth Gibbons fan and you've kind of had this dogma of Billie Holiday, Billie Holiday, Billie Holiday, maybe it's a different singer with jazz chops who she's like. And then, that's not even... Okay. Can I do Skye admits to being a misogynist corner? I do this all the time. I didn't listen to a lot of female-led music when I was growing up. There's a ton of reasons for this. Most of it is just misogyny that just permeated my existence. I had 3 brothers and no sisters, and girls wouldn't talk to me in high school at all. And when they did, I was kind of weird. I wasn't a creep, but I was weird, okay? So I was a weirdo. I didn't really know how to talk to girls. Okay, right? So, like, Portishead was one of the few bands that I listened to that was female-led. It was basically the great 3 of the 90s. Bjork, PJ Harvey, Portishead. But you know what a jerk I was? I always just assumed it was a Pygmalion situation. I just assumed that Beth Gibbons was like the front person and that whoever the dude was doing all of the work. It's shameful. Like, seriously, it's shameful to admit things like that, but it's important to admit things like that. And one thing this album does is it helps me to understand, oh, wow, so much of what I loved about Portishead came from her. But that's not to say there isn't an awesome dude involved in this project as well. One of my favorite dudes in music right now, James Ford. James Ford. He produced This year, The Last Dinner Party. A couple years ago, Drunk Tank Pink by Shame, underrated album. And he released that Geese album. He is just absolutely on fire. He deserves in that conversation of sort of best producers alive right now making really great music. I'm not sure what he does. He doesn't really have like a trademark style. There's a fair chance that you're European if you're watching this. So I see him more as an Ancelotti than a Guardiola kind of producer, sort of like putting good people in a room and letting them do what they do, as opposed to trying to figure out some kind of like overarching technique. If that makes sense to you in the comments, say thank you, Skye, for making that reference. If it doesn't, man, you just got to get hip to soccer, man. Soccer rules. Okay, last thing before I get to the songs, it's the family reaction. So, I have a baby, I have 2 teenagers, and I have a wife. My son heard said the PJ Harvey thing. He likes this album a lot. My daughter, we listened to it yesterday. She's like, Dad, this is really good. What is this? And I told her, and then she got on. She's like, I just started listening to Portishead. Like, she was so proud of herself, My baby, she loves music and she loves rhythm. This is part of how I learned that this was a drum album, because she drums like that, like when there's drums happening. And this is an album that leads to that because there's no cymbals. It's just like the thump, the thump, the thump, the thump. And then the highest compliment you can get in my house is my wife asking, is this what you're reviewing next? And when she asks that, it's because she's upset. She wants to keep listening to it, and she knows the second I'm done with this video, it's getting rejected like a middle-aged actress in the 1980s, right? So like when she says that, she doesn't. What she's really telling me is this: Skye, are we not going to listen to this album anymore? Because I really like it. Could you please get it on vinyl? Maybe your Patreons can help you out, because then we can have it and I can listen to it. And then it'll be like Japanese breakfast. It'll be a thing I listen to all the time, and then it'll be like a whole thing. It'll make my life better. Could you please do that, Skye? So, thank you to my Patreons, such as Zach, and one other one asked for a shout out. It was Zach, and it was like abstract pop. Okay, I sometimes do shout outs to my Patreons. I just say if they like it, they can ask for a shout out. Smash like button, subscribe. If you put in the letters AVAA, that stands for awesome video as always, and I will always heart those comments. I don't know if this video will get a lot of views, so I'll probably be able to see your comment. But I don't care, because this is why I love this channel, because I get to study these things that I might have missed. My stamp, my example song, it's too hot. It's too hot. I like the yellow and blue ensemble, but it's just too hot. The stamp, the example song is Tell Me Who You Are Today, the first track on the album. I love it when the first song is an example song. This great rumbling acoustic guitar with the underwater muted drums. Very interesting rhythms. Again, this Lee Harris fellow is doing a hell of a job all the way throughout here. There's an instrument called a daf, which is like a Middle Eastern style, like snare-ish, sort of tambourine-ish thing. There's spoons being played. There's a double bass, mellotron, harmonium, vibraphone, strings. All these things together to set this atmosphere, this really low, because she has great range, right? She has this great low singing, and then she goes up higher, and it all resolves to this kind of droning note. The lyrics are very typical. I could change the way I feel. I could make my body heal, feel free from all I hear inside, all brought forward from my hand, a pagan sorrow, my command. Here I am, lonely love, falling now, falling in. It's like cross between poetry and a meditation on existence. I think a pagan sorrow, I do think the paganness kind of connects to a sort of older England, a sort of pre-America England. A true story, my last name is Payne. It means pagan. It just means like people who were far away from Rome, who were farmers, and then the farmers became called pagans. So that's why, like paisan, same word, pagan, pagano. So it's all leads into this general pre-industrial. Not even pre-America. It's like a pre-industrial image of England mixed in with these meditations on her and her life, right? Because it's lives outgrown. Theoretically, she's had many lives. And just as it goes, we have this chorus with these gorgeous harmonies and these resolving horns. Come over, listen to me. That's all the chorus is. The second verse, tell me all you want to say. Tell me who you are today, free from all I hear inside. Does she have a kid? Because sometimes kids like to pretend to be other things. So I kind of imagine this like, are you a bullfrog today? Tell me who you are today. Or is it a larger question about the nature of her life? Who is she today? And there's a great discord in this chorus with the horns. You can hear the influence of Gorecki everywhere, especially these low strings get louder, some whiny strings. Great instrumental bit here. These strings get more highlighted. The strings play this little melody at times. It's almost like a what do you call that? That kind of scale, chromatic kind of scale, sort of Middle Eastern-y kind of scale. All these layers and layers, and it's like laughing strings and these guitar notes that get louder, and the voice comes back, and then we have that weird tambourine drum thing, kind of doing a 1, 2, 3, 4, but that's just on your right side. If you're listening to it in your kitchen while you're making pancakes with kefir instead of buttermilk because you ran out of buttermilk. Well, you had buttermilk, but it went bad. So if you're making kefir pancakes, you're not going to hear it. But if you're there watching Sunset Boulevard on your headphones, you're really going to feel it. And then just for good measure, a little bit like James Bond piano stabs and string stabs. And then the outro, it just resolves and goes back to the original sound at the beginning of the album. Do you get why this is so good? Next track is Floating on a Moment. The bass. This is great. This is like unexpected melody with this bass that's just all over the place. It sort of reminds me, I forget which Pavement song. Hi ho silver down, whatever that one is, whatever Hi Ho Silver is. What about the voice of Geddy Lee? How did it get so high? That song, I met him. The bass reminds me a lot of that. This kind of like desultory style. And when she starts saying like the word floating, this hammer dulcimer comes in and starts to float. All these great rhythms, and it builds so. And the bass is just going so hard. James Ford. Incidental sounds in the back, and then a children's choir singing. Not since Smog in their album Knock Knock has the children's chorus been so used. Her voice is just so gorgeous and so well done. And the outro has got the children's voices and a recorder, which is of course a pre-industrial instrument and also a children's instrument. I remember when I was in second grade, they tried to teach me how to play recorder, and I got so upset that I couldn't make it to make a good sound that I cried in my room, my little yellow room. I would cry because I would try to play, I'd go, boy! James Ford figured it out. Then we get to the best song on the album, Burden of Life. This is going to my notes. Best song of the year, maybe. These muted toms. It was funny because, like, I was talking to my son. My son's a huge Radiohead fan. I'm like, I guarantee you, Tom York has listened to nothing but this album since he heard this. And the next thing he does is going to be somehow a reaction to this. Because, oh my God, this great melody. Like, she has this way of singing that's sort of like, and this is going to sound so freaking pretentious, but to me, it vacillates between like sort of like a Nick Cave and Leonard Cohen style. I hated saying that. I still think it's a good point, but I don't like saying it. Great muted toms. Just my notes. My sophisticated notes. I wrote, Jesus Christ, this is an amazing song. Okay? So I don't have a script. I have notes, and that's what I wrote. Okay? That's what I did while I was there on the elliptical. I just was swooshed away. Strings come in as she sings the title of the song. All the times I've lost my way, crept inside, tried not to sway like pebbles on the shore. Pebbles on the shore sway. That's a good line. See? That's what's called good poetry. Because you don't associate rocks with swaying and moving. But when you think about pebbles on the shore, you think about them going... There's a lot of things you can do in the ocean. One of the coolest things you can do is just watch pebbles get their ass kicked by the ocean over and over and over again, you know? And that's how she's trying not to be. The burden of life just won't leave us alone, and the time's never right when we're trading the sun. The burden of life. It's like an existentialist thing. You know, Sartre always talk about the burden of choice. Or just the burden of life. It's the burden of life. Are you alive? If you're watching this and you're alive, it's hard. It's hard. You got to get up every day. You got to do all the stuff you got to do. If you're not doing the stuff you got to do, you got to feel bad about it. You got to do all these things. And then there's this instrumental bit at 2 minutes, which I'm doing my best to describe. These strings hit really hard and discordant. This like one faster and one slower. The drums are just muted in the back with some added random percussion. This ridiculously high violin comes in, and then some clear Bernard Herrmann style strings, cinematic, tracing this really romantic melody. And then ends when she starts singing Burden of Life. And that's where I realized this is a lot like Where Do I Begin by Shirley Bassey. More discordant strings in the last verse, high and whiny, and then it ends with just like one bass note. It's like the best bass note. Lost changes, kind of clear guitar. I don't like this one as much. It's a little bit more on the nose. Okay, the way that she sings "Hey You" over these two acoustic guitar chords, I just thought it sounded like Pink Floyd. Now listen, I do love Pink Floyd. I've never said I love Pink Floyd, but I do. In particular, I love Animals. And I do think that Radiohead is sort of the new Pink Floyd in terms of the way they sound. And actually, to be fair to Pink Floyd, they do exist in that space that I'm talking about quite often. The album Animals is right there in that same space as Gorecki and Portishead and Isaac Hayes. But still, I don't know, it's profound, you know, love changes things, time changes things. A nice kind of false ending because we have a bridge that's totally Gorecki. Okay? It's got this really like the moving part of Gorecki, the part that makes you just feel like you're going to levitate out of the 8th floor of the library and just fly over the ocean and over the mountains. And even a little bit of synthesizers, maybe? Kind of Twin Peaksy. Twin Peaksy is a show that exists in that entire space. And then the outro with these strings and the humming, and it's just low. And again, all of my attempts to be a super smart person look at my stupid notes. Ethereal as hell. What does that mean, Skye? Professor? Next track is called Rewind. Low detoned guitars, more chromatic scales. Putting this out there. Beth Gibbons. King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard, dual bill. I think it would work. Now we've had our fun. It's time to recognize the damage done, and the wild has no more to give. I think this is an environmental song. Why not? And this is one of the songs that's just co-written by the drummer Lee Hall. And the wild has no more to give. That's a great idea. We've gone too far to rewind, The drums get super hard in here. There's like this cacophonous jam after the chorus, this really nutty saxophone in there, this last line repeated over and over again. Like, I never feel like this is 1,000 miles away from Portishead, but it doesn't always feel the same. But then just hearing the distorted voice on this song is like, oh, that's very Portishead-y. And then outro is just like this 1 minute jam. I have to read my notes here. Warbled sounds, drums going hard, no cymbals, and then children's voices about diving into a pool. Listen. She's got to have kids. I don't care. I think she's got to have kids. I think these are her kids who are just having a nice time. I think it's a song about the way that we mistreat nature and that we're leaving not the coolest planet on Earth for the next generation. And then the kid dives into the pool. Reaching Out is the next song, kind of vocal centered. You said you will, you said you will, you said you won't. Maybe not the best lyrics there. More muted notes, cool ghostly instrumental interludes. I need your love to silence all that shame. Now that's an interesting lyric. I don't like it. The way that she sings, though, in this song, there's like one point, her voice, it's like it loses its cool. It's where she says, I need you at a certain point. And it's before she hits these really high notes. And it's like the one time where it feels like this person who's totally a complete master of her voice kind of loses it. The song also kind of reminds me a little bit of Reckoner, speaking of Radiohead. The best Radiohead song. Yeah, I'll stick by that. What a stupid thing to say in the middle of a video. Okay. Ends with kind of James Bondy strings, high singing, vocalizing. This is definitely the most James Bondy song. Oceans is the next song. A lot of nature on this album, a lot of themes of water and time, acoustic guitar going low to high, amazing vocal production. This is the thing, right? This is what I'm saying, like maybe James Ford deserves a lot of credit for why this album is so good. I don't want to take credit away from Beth Gibbons like I have been for, 30 years? So I'm very loath to give all this credit to James Ford, but come on. I fake in the morning a steak to relieve. I never notice the pain I perceive because my heart is tired and warm. She talks about ovulation. Okay, maybe she doesn't have a kid. Maybe this is about the regret of not having kids. Maybe those kids in the previous song. Why do I care, Skye? This is why you got to stay away from biography, by the way. So what, right? So I find out that she has 4 kids and that her husband directed Masterpiece Theater for 10 years and I don't know what, okay? Whatever kind of fantastical thing I can imagine, okay? Her husband is a Australian didgeridoo player, okay? Whatever it is you can possibly imagine. Why does it matter when this music is capable of communicating all of these things that connect me, at least, to the feelings that I have as a father and as someone who's trying to be a steward for the next generation? Beautiful. Left channel, these little like muted snares. Again, you have to have the headphones on, these sighing descending strings. This is one where you really need to have headphones. No, you can enjoy this without headphones, but listen to it again with headphones. This whole album, it's like a real depth to it. Outro is some like loud feedback. For Sale, cool kind of guitar, badass lead line. The guitar line's kind of sliding all over the place. Almost sounds like a guitar exercise at a point, but always resolving to a kind of drone-like bass note. Maybe more Nick Cave style vocals. Great range though. I mean, she has way more range than Nick Cave. Very emphatic. There's this cool thing where there's this like, I'm trying to figure out like what makes the Beth Gibbons sound of a song. And I think it might be like having a chorus that just like seems to take one step down and go into minor. I can't imitate it for you because I'm not a good enough musician, but that's the basic idea where it's like like just one. I didn't do it, you see, but like a half step down and minor. That's the chorus. That's like the Portishead Gibbons playbook. Dramatic cinematic strings, dramatic lyrics. If we don't stop now, will we go too far? The rhythm here, I think it switches from 6/8 or 3/4 to 4/4. I don't quite know, but this has a violin solo. I have not mentioned Raven Bush once. Sounds like an adult performer's name, but Raven Bush, don't know if it's a dude, don't know if it's a lady. That's so Raven. Raven Bush is all over this album playing violin, and this is a standout moment in an album filled with standout moments, instrumentals. Really listen to his, her, their, either. Could be, could be non-binary. Great percussion. Like, this is why you need headphones, because you start to realize, oh, this is like shells and bells kind of percussion. And then there's like operatic oohs, and the outro is really just the percussion. Beyond the Sun is the cool faraway sounds, acoustic guitar shuffling. This is a little bit more like upbeat. Like her vocals are a little bit more there. It's almost like a, not fade away style bump, 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 the bump, bump. You could do a mix up if you wanted to of I Want Candy in this song. How many times have I said this is the best instrumental part? I think this is maybe the best instrumental part because there's this bad saxophone played. I could spend the next 10 years of my life practicing saxophone 3 hours a day and not play saxophone as well as the person who plays saxophone poorly on this song, because they're not playing it poorly, they're playing it for an effect, and it has this like blown out effect and this squeaky effect, and then it leads into this kind of na 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 na. That's the other thing my baby loves. She loves any songs with na 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 and la la la, so she's sitting there going la 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 la. Great percussion, it's catchy. The drums are just so awesome. Boom, ba-dum, 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 boom, ba-dum, boom, boom. Just awesome. And the lyrics are just a poem. I'm just going to read you the poem, okay? Can I read you a poem? I'm going to read you a poem. If I had known where I'd begun, would I still fear where I might end? If I had known you from the start, would I still visit the place in the dark? If I had spoken of the world I once was, words that I have noticed when we were apart, if I'd remembered a moment before, would I have risen, not felt so unsure? The loss of faith, filled with doubt, no relief can be found. A song of doubt, a song of uncertainty, a sound of understanding, like trying to reach something, a lighter, better place, but being unable to do because you have lost your faith and you're filled with doubt. Do you get, right? Like her voice, like what other voice could sing that well and make you feel it that well? And then these cool low, okay, so then the outro here is like the guitar or some kind of stringed instrument played super low on the bridge to make these cool sounds, and all kind of fades away. The album ends with Whispering Love, cool whip. And this has flutes for real. Just the whole album's been kind of flirting with flutes, fluting with flirts, but really all over the place. Acoustic guitar, nice little bird sounds. It's like a nice little waltz. Okay, listen, I'm not big enough yet. I'm getting there to have people where there's lore behind me. But I'm pretty sure every single time I've ever referred to a waltz, I've called it a nice little waltz. So if I ever get to, Fantano status, I would hope that someone out there will do a supercut of every single time I've referred to something as a nice little waltz. But that's what I think of. I hear ba I think nice little. Leaves of our tree of life, where the summer sun always shines through the trees of wisdom. Again, we're very much in this natural world, and the PJ Harvey album, right? I mean, that was like a concept album about like a pubescent girl in the 50s who's like having some kind of pagan ritual with people in the right. Super far out there. This is not bad. But I do think this is in a similar kind of trying to connect to some kind of natural pre-industrial world. And a lot of that comes through with these thematics of trees and oceans and seasons and suns and darkness. And there's this... Okay. I'm going to guess it's Beth Gibbons. But somebody is responsible for this little high fiddle sound that sounds like a siren or like an alarm. I love this sound so much. The way that it's used, okay? Like the way that it's used, the way it's not up front, and it's just this little sound in the back. I'm done. I like it. I like that sound. Okay? You made it this far. I'm not going to describe it anymore. That was that album. It absolutely rules. These are my Patreons. I just had to do a reprint because my old one was way out of date. Look at all these people who helped me out. And I am absolutely going to go buy this Beth Gibbons album. It's just, oh my God, am I going to buy this album. I cannot wait. It's going to fill my house with joy for the rest of my life. You know, music can do that, right? It brings you joy. Why do we listen to music? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Why do human beings listen to music? Why do we make music? Why does it exist? That same brother who gave me Dora the Explorer asked me that question once, and I don't have an answer for you. But anyways, it could be the feeling that you get listening to Lives Outgrown. All right. Until next time, where I'll be talking about Beak. I might... check my community page. I don't know if I'm going to do a wide release of that video. I don't know if it's going to tank my algorithm or not. Is there a demand for it? You tell me in the comments. All right, till next time, there's the camera.